Good evening, everyone. On behalf of BiG Bank, welcome to our special webinar with the title Moving to Portugal Residence Permit Options. My name is Pedro Coutinho. I am BiG Head of Private Wealth Management Division, and we have a great panel of speakers joining us today. And like you, I'm interested to hear how Portugal provides foreign investors the conditions to invest and live. But what benefits does this bring? Here to help us answer these and other related questions are speakers from Deloitte, CTSU lawyers, and BiG Bank with 3 presentations of 15 minutes. Our panel brings a range of expert views, which I'm sure it will make for a living and insightful discussion. But before I present our panel, just a bit of housekeeping. If you could please adjust your screen size and volume for the best experience, and please use our platform to ask questions throughout the presentations. I will try to drop them into the main panel discussion, but obviously we will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. Now, today's panel is about as strong as it gets in the Portuguese special tax regime discussion, I would say. We have Aline Almeida, who is the Associate Partner for Private Tax and Global Employer Services at Deloitte, Jorge Martins, Partner and Head of Tax and Immigration at CTSU Lawyers, the Deloitte legal arm. Miguel Cordeiro is a Principal Associate from CTSU and will presenting with Jorge. And last but not least, Catarina Pereira, International Private Wealth Manager from BiG Bank, will present a number of investment solutions for foreign investors. I mean, you don't get any more directly related to this subject than this. So my first point here would be, I would like to ask Aline for an update and to kind of tell us how this Portuguese special tax regime for inbounds works and what are the benefits.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, everyone, for attending this webinar. So the idea is, as Pedro was explaining, to have a brief overview of the special tax regime that exists in Portugal for new inbounds, named Non-Habitual resident regime. So for today's agenda, so we're going to cover very briefly the requirements on becoming a non-habitual resident, the main taxation rules, and a glimpse of what to expect of the regime for the future, knowing that we can't really predict the future, but given the information available, what is our expectation? So first of all, the main question usually is, why should I move to Portugal? What is so special about the non-habitual resident regime? Well, first of all, it is a regime that may allow individuals to benefit from a full exemption on foreign source income. So it is not automatic, as we'll see later on. It is definitely not applicable to all types of income, but still possible. And it applies for a 10-year period. It is also available for all nationalities, so that this is a little bit of a misconception that we hear very frequently, that there's a special agreement between Portugal and specific countries. It is not. So it's a special tax regime within the Portuguese law, which applies to everyone, regardless the nationality, even Portuguese individuals that live abroad and want to return to Portugal. Now, another feature that we can say at this point about the regime is the stability. So we've seen throughout the 11 years of existence, or almost 12 years of existence of the regime, that no big changes have been introduced, and all of those that were made were really to improve the mechanics of the regime and a little bit practicalities. So, and also given the last evaluation that was made about the regime, we believe that there are conditions in terms of stability to have a continuance of the regime, at least for another 10-year period. So next slide, please. So a little bit of numbers, just to reflect what the regime has represented so far. I know that in many countries, particularly Nordic countries, there has been a huge debate about the regime. But if we look at the numbers, they're not as significant as we would expect them to be, or at least as we wanted them to be. And there's still a huge potential for the regime to increase. So far we've had almost 52,000 people covered by the regime, and we noticed a slight decline in 2020 given the pandemic, but this year the prospects are very good in terms of number of applications. And the main nationalities that have sought the regime when moving to Portugal have been mainly France, UK, Brazil, and even Portugal, as I was mentioning earlier. So we've seen a trend more recently for US citizens to move to Portugal and to benefit also from the regime. But as the year progresses, we'll see how it goes. Next slide, please. So first of all, who can indeed benefit from the regime? Well, one thing about the regime is that it is targeted for people that actually move to Portugal, that take up residency in Portugal. So it means that it applies to individuals that become Portuguese tax residents. So becoming a Portuguese tax resident means that an individual must comply with at least one of two main conditions. So staying in Portugal for roughly 6 months in any 12-month period, or it can be but the conditions are alternative. So, or having a permanent residence available to the individual throughout the tax year. So unlike other regimes, the special tax regimes, there's no specific condition about the type of property or the value of the rent or the value of the property itself. So the only condition is that individuals do have a permanent residence available to them in conditions that this suggests that they are using that property as their primary residence. So first condition is really taking up residence in Portugal, becoming a Portuguese tax resident. The other condition for individuals to benefit from the regime is that they cannot have been tax residents in Portugal during the 5 years prior to their move. So this is important in the especially for Portuguese nationals that lived in Portugal, moved abroad, and then they come back. So it's important that all the records are done correctly. And this is also important for those that plan to invest in Portugal, to buy a property, and are considering the possibility of moving later on to Portugal. So it is critical that all the registrations are done correctly from the beginning to avoid, further delays. It won't prevent people from becoming non-habitual residents, but the process itself might be a bit more complex. So eligibility can be quite straightforward, but with some details on practicalities that are important to comply with. Next slide, please. So one thing to stress about the non-habitual resident regime is that it means that individuals are tax residents in Portugal. What are then the implications of this? Why is this so important? Well, first of all, for all Portuguese source income, individuals will be taxed as ordinary residents in Portugal. Secondly, it is possible to obtain residency certificates in Portugal. So unlike other regimes where individuals are taxed as non-residents, in Portugal, people qualify as tax residents can get tax residency certificates, and they have the full scope of the implications. So meaning that it is necessary to file annual income tax returns. And this is also one trigger. So it's important that the annual tax returns are filed correctly in order to ensure that individuals do benefit from the regime. And one other topic to emphasize is that all the income that is not exempt, so taxed as an ordinary resident, will be liable to progressive rates in Portugal at which can go up to 53%, or the special tax rates that usually apply to capital, to investment income, capital gains, or even real estate, which is roughly 28% or 35% for income from tax havens. So next slide, please. So what does then make the regime so special and, well, apparently simple, but with several complexities? We usually say about taxes, and especially about the non-habitual resident regime, that the devil is in the details. So if you look at this table, you can see that it is possible for all types of income to avail of a full exemption in Portugal. So it doesn't mean that the income will have or won't have any tax at all. Potentially the income might be taxable in the country of source, but it does mean that in Portugal, it is possible not to have additional taxation. But we always need to address each type of income specifically and to ensure that the specific conditions are met for that type of income. So to give some example of those that are usually more critical. So when we look at investment income, we traditionally think about dividends and interest, and quite often income distributions from funds in Portugal are not qualified as a dividend or as an interest. So ultimately, if this qualification is not possible, then the income will automatically not benefit from the exemption. So if the country of source does not qualify the income as a dividend or as an interest, it will be qualified as other investment income. So then the exemption will not be available. So the income will be taxed at the domestic rates for investment income. So ultimately 28% or 35% for income from tax havens. Another type of income to emphasize is also capital gains, which as a rule are not exempt at all in Portugal. So usually capital gains are taxable at 28% rate because it is the country of residence that retains taxation rights over capital gains. So for those that have portfolios that have a corporate structure, that have income that will be focused on or mainly based on capital gains, it is important to structure the income flow for the coming years, and ideally before moving to Portugal, in order to benefit as much as possible from the regime. So in terms of other taxes, and this is also one very particular aspect about Portugal, which makes it very attractive to live in Portugal. We don't have wealth taxes in Portugal. There was a bit of a debate some years ago around the possibility of introducing wealth taxes in Portugal, but that idea was set aside. We also don't have inheritance taxes. We do have stamp duty, which applies to certain inheritance and gifts, but usually for direct heirs, so spouses, children, or even descendants, there is an exemption of stamp duty. And gift tax, not only, well, apart from the these exemptions that I've just mentioned, it doesn't apply to income sourced, for assets located outside Portugal. We do have municipal property taxes, which are levied on real estate. So if there's a decision to move into Portugal, it is important also to factor in these taxes that are mainly payable upfront. So the larger slice of a liability is upon the acquisition of the property, but there's also an ongoing liability annually of municipal property tax. Next slide, please. In terms of what can we expect for the future, and what has been debated about the regime. Over the years, we've seen different, political parties, different sectors of the economy debating the regime. And so far, the conclusion has been that the regime has been quite beneficial for the Portuguese economy. So the main impact is not necessarily a tax impact, although it has indirectly a tax impact, because the regime was built to attract people to move to Portugal, to waive tax on income, but to promote taxation on consumption and on investment. So there is, there has been an impact for the government in terms of taxation, but it is not officially measured, and also the economic effects of the regime have not been measured but recognized so far. So the last evaluation that was made was indeed to promote the regime for at least 10 more years. So it is our expectation to have the regime continuing for at least this period. We've seen a pattern, a change in the pattern of people moving to Portugal. So initially the regime was designed mainly to attract two categories of people to move to Portugal. So highly qualified individuals in sectors where we might have a shortage of know-how or of resources, and pensioners. So the idea of the regime initially was to make Portugal the Florida of Europe. We've seen this trend changing. We've seen more high net worth individuals and families moving to Portugal, more entrepreneurs and digital nomads, those that can live anywhere and work from anywhere, that have been choosing Portugal as their place to settle. Initially for a couple of years, and we've seen many continuing for the whole 10-year period. As I've also mentioned earlier, so there has been a debate with some certain countries around the treaties and the regime, mainly Finland and Sweden, that have revoked the treaties, or that there has been a decision from Sweden to revoke the treaty, and also the UK and France that have their treaties that are, quite old, we might say, and that needs to be updated. So these changes have been more of an update, not necessarily going against the regime. The main area that was criticized by certain countries was the full exemption on pensions, and this has been addressed. So last year we introduced a 10% rate on pensions. So some of the criticism about the regime, and specifically that the non-taxation of pensions was dealt with. So we see only huge possibilities for the future in terms of the regime and its capacity to attract people to move to Portugal, and to adjust it to many different situations. Next slide, please. So if we can wrap up in terms of for those that might be considering moving to Portugal, the really first advice that we can give everyone is to plan ahead, and to save some time, some month, to analyze whether the regime is suitable for each individual, or if it is not suitable from the first analysis, is there anything that can be done to change either the income structure or the way assets are held to maximize the benefits from the regime, and from that point onwards plan the relocation in terms of timings, and bearing in mind that it is a residency regime, so it does require people to move to Portugal. So it is not necessary to be 183 days, but people have to take up residence in Portugal and to adjust their lives accordingly. So from our end, and in the next slide, you'll have our contacts. So anything that we can do to help, we'll be more than pleased. Pedro, I pass on to you.
Thank you, Aline. Thank you. Very good. I got some questions for you later, but now I'm going to ask George and Miguel for an update from the CTSU side in what are the associated advantages for someone that decides to invest in Portugal under the Golden Visa program. George.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, BiG, for this opportunity to try to clarify this regime. Me and my colleague Miguel will try to explain some aspects, the most important aspects of the regime and the most common doubts that we receive from the clients when we are in process of in this Golden Visa program. This presentation is also important because one of the main doubts of the clients is that the NHR and the Golden Visa regime are the same, and they are not. We will try to clarify that and explain the main aspects of this regime. We will explain first what is the regime, how does it work, what kinds of investments do we have. Then we will pass through all the process with the main highlights of the process, and we will finish with well, what will have been our experience on this process. So beginning with what is this regime, who is eligible for the Golden Visa program. The main question here is that all the non-European Union citizens are eligible for this program. Of course, the European Union citizens, they have movement, freedom of movement through the Schengen area, and so the UK, to begin with the example, until the end of last year, the citizens were not eligible for this program. Nowadays, they are already eligible as they are not part of the European Union, as you may know. This program was established in 2012, first with 5 routes of investment, and since then, with parties from the left wing and parties from the right wing, they have been added in several changes of the regime, other routes of investment, and so we believe this will, for now, will continue as an interesting route to obtain a residency permit. The question is, this investment should be maintained for a period of 5 years, and should be the application should be done by the investor or through a Portuguese limited liability company established in Portugal. So next slide, please. The process begins with the investment itself. Miguel will explain 2 of the routes of the investment that they are more in course nowadays. The investment, then we have the initial application that I will explain an overview of the process. After 2 years, we have the first renewal. After more 2 years, we have the second renewal until the end of the program, that is the 5 years, as mentioned before. At the end of this period, our clients have applied either for the citizenship, the permanent residence, or the Golden Visa renewal. The most common has been the citizenship, because the Portuguese passport is very well ranked, and so it's very important for people to obtain the citizenship, and so it's one of the main advantages of obtaining these residency permits. Next slide, please. So, Miguel, now.
Thank you, George. Thank you. So basically, there are several routes of investment. We will be focusing mainly on the capital investment route of 1 million euros, where it is possible through a capital investment to gain access to the residence program. And also another big trend since the pandemic has started is the investment in funds. So in funds and mainly in venture capital funds with a ticket of 350,000 euros. Please note that these conditions will change starting from the 1st of January of the next year, of 2022, due to a recent introduction in our law where the Portuguese government has increased the tickets of the capital investment to 1.5 and the ticket of the investment in funds to 500,000 euros. There are also other routes of investment. The real estate investment was also very popular before the pandemic, but actually I'm a banking and finance lawyer, and I have only started working in this area of the Golden Visa with the pandemic, because people started looking into the investment in funds and the capital investment with more interest. But the real estate investment is still a route, and it's also available for investors, as well as other not so popular routes of investment, such as artistic work and recovery of Portuguese cultural heritage. We never saw a case like that, but it's also available. Or the corporate investment, the creation of a company, and the job creation of 350,000 euros. So next slide, please. We will now focus on the two main routes of investment, basically the capital investment and the investment in funds and in venture capital funds. The capital investment has one of the main requirements is transfer of capital of a minimum amount of 1 million euros that should be introduced in the Portuguese financial system. The investment options are several. We would recommend following the more classic approach of a bank deposit, a Portuguese public debt instrument, securities. The acquisition of an equity stake in a Portuguese company is also another available investment, but there are other possibilities which can be also subject to but must be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, because they can be subject to interpretation from the Portuguese immigration officers. From 22 onwards, as I already explained, the minimum capital amount of 1 million will be raised to 1.5 million. Next slide, please. The investment in funds is also another alternative, and it has been a route that has been followed by some of our clients that wish to gain the Portuguese residence, the Golden Visa program. So it's a capital transfer amount of 350,000 euros for the acquisition of units or shares in an investment fund or a venture capital fund that is dedicated to the capitalization of Portuguese companies or companies headquartered in Portugal, whose maturity at the moment of the investment is of at least 5 years, and at least 60% of the investment is realized in commercial companies with headquarters in Portugal. So the majority of the market is dominated by venture capital funds. It's also possible to find equity funds that are meeting the eligibility criteria, but these are rare. The majority of clients pursue several options, but they end up in finding more availability in venture capital funds. Venture capital funds that are the typical venture capital fund that invests in companies, in Portuguese companies with the high potential for growth, or venture capital funds that invest in companies that follow real estate activities, so they hold real estate. So there's also different options for you to choose from. And a final note, as with the capital investment from January of next year, the required capital amount will increase from 350 to 500k. So now I would ask George to explain how the procedure works from the investment part, from this investment stage until the final.
Thank you, Miguel. As Miguel mentioned, the first step will be always the investment, of course. For instance, giving the example of the real estate investment, it will begin by the acquisition and the registration of the acquisition of the property. In case of the fund investment, or in case of the capital investment, Miguel will explain what that will consist, but the first step will be always the investment. Afterwards, we apply for a pre-registration, a pre-approval. In this pre-approval, we submit some of the documents, not all, but some of the documents regarding not only the investment itself, but also regarding the applicants and also the family members that they want to include. Well, to not bother you with details, but criminal records, marriage certificates, well, passports and other personal data that is important for the Portuguese Immigration Office to evaluate the documents. This pre-registration, after they do like a pre-approval, and we can book the appointment to the Portuguese Immigration Office to go to collect the biometric data and present all the necessary documentation besides the one that we already submitted in the platform. And then we have an approval, a decision from CEF stating that we are approved, and the card will be issued. The residency permit is a card, a legal card, and the residency permit will be issued in a period of 1 month. Well, the deadlines here are merely indicative. Of course, with the COVID, they could be a little extended, but in our experience, like 6 to 9 months in normal circumstances, the process will be concluded. In what concerns our experience, Miguel will detail his experience on this.
Yeah, so typically when the client wishes to pursue an investment route for obtaining the residence through the Golden Visa residence program in Portugal, the first step is an assessment of the investments. We can, as lawyers, we act as an independent entity that will help the client to evaluate the fund documentation, the fund rules. If it's a fund, if it's another kind of instrument, we can also do the same exercise. Basically, we do a due diligence of investor red flags, and we check the eligibility criteria of the investment. As a step 3, we also provide assistance in the opening of bank accounts and in obtaining the required declarations. We also assist our clients in providing them with some contacts for fund managers and banks that will be prepared to issue the declaration. We will be prepared to assist the clients that will be holding a long-standing relationship with a bank and with a financial intermediary for 5 years at least, and these entities must be ready to, for instance, issue certain tax declarations to certain jurisdictions. So it's very important that the selection of these entities is carefully thought through and is also an important part. So this, then as a final step, there will be the collection of the Golden Visa elements for the investment and for the family reunion to be presented to the Portuguese Immigration Office. So basically, there will be the investment phase finishing with the issuance of the declarations by the bank that proves that capital transfer has occurred, and also if there's an investment in a fund, the fund manager will also issue a declaration that will be presented to the Portuguese authorities, making proof that the investment is done and that is held in custody in the bank. And then the whole process that George has described earlier of the Golden Visa application program to the Immigration Office will start. And we can follow the client through all these steps. George, if you want to present our law firm, go ahead.
Just to finish and to have an idea, we have several areas and industries that we work. We are Deloitte legal practice, and we have several areas of expertise, and we can help in all these areas, not only related with this investment. We provide, well, range of legal assistance. As Miguel explained, we cannot be act as financial advisors because we as lawyers, we are not we are not entitled to do it. We can have regulatory problems if we do it, but of course we are available for all the assistance regarding the legal matters and some practical matters regarding not only the investment but all the process. Next slide, please. We have all these solutions that we mentioned here. I will not bother with this. So I will proceed to the next slide. Just to have an idea that we are in several locations and we can provide an help in international, in a global perspective. And finally, to the next slide, to give you our contacts. mine and my colleague Miguel. Thank you for your patience, and of course we are available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good, George and Miguel. Thank you very much. The last topics helps me with the transition to Catarina. So, Catarina, knowing that those foreign investors need to open a bank account and a Portuguese bank account, are we, and I mean BiG, prepared to do so? What we can offer to these sophisticated investors?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, Pedro, for the introduction. As Pedro just introduced, I will be presenting you the bank and how BiG Bank can contribute for the residence permit and for non-habitual residents. Next slide, please. So giving you a brief overview about the bank. BiG Bank is a specialized investment bank offering mainly investment and saving solutions. Nevertheless, it is authorized to operate in all areas of the banking business in Portugal. BiG Bank was founded in 1999 by a team with national and international experiences in the investment banking and capital markets. When founded, BiG was the first online bank in Portugal, the first online broker, and the first offering online access to international markets. So BiG's activity has always been focused on technology, on the continuous identification of innovative and investment saving solutions. Today, BiG provides digital access to all kinds of investment solutions, and we work in an open architecture model with all integrated distribution channels. BiG headquarters are in Lisbon. We have in Portugal 15 branches. In 2016, we expanded our business, starting operations in Mozambique, where we operate mainly on investment banking services for institutional clients. Last year, even in the middle of the pandemic scenario, BiG established a new branch in Spain, located in Madrid now. And in Spain, BiG provides at this moment wealth management services for individuals and corporate finance for companies and venture capital funds. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, BiG has been innovating since the first beginning. At the slides, we will find some examples of innovative and pioneer developments in the financial industry in Portugal. As have been told, BiG was the first online brokerage in Portugal. BiG also launched for the first time an investment funds online platform, which we call in Portuguese Supermercados de Fundos, traduced to English investment fund supermarket, and that is nowadays leader in the distribution of third-party funds, providing access to over 1,000 different funds from over 25 global asset managers. In 2018, BiG launched the digital onboarding, which is an account opening process, 100% digital with no paper. And this was one more step for innovation. And in 2019, we developed the BiG Total Banking. This was again the first bank. We were again the first bank in Portugal offering its customers the possibility to have an aggregate view of all their bank accounts in one single place through the websites of BiG. BiG Start Ventures is a venture capital that invests in fintech startups across Europe. And today, BiG as a bank is the biggest bank investor in fintech in Portugal nowadays. Finally, in February from the current year, BiG launched a total new platform for bonds with direct access to bonds exchanges and access to several issuers by geography and maturity. Next slide, please. Here we would like to give you a short overview about the bank's financial indicators. The bank's core solvency metrics have been consistently robust since its foundation, because the core tier 1 ratio has always been above 30%. For you to have an idea, the average core tier 1 ratio in the European banks is much below this limit, around 14–15%. So it's at least a double. BiG has been growing its own funds around 58% during the last 5 years. You can also observe that the loans ratio is close to zero. since BiG does not provide credit services like housing credit, car credits, and so on. So actually, BiG has always been seeking to ensure solid and sustainable growth since beginning, is independent from any financial group, shareholder, or other group-specific interests, since the bank capital is reasonably dispersed and owned by mainly Portuguese and institutional investors. So this next slide, due to this solid position, we will give you just a smaller overview about the awards. Due to our solid position, BiG was named 10 times over 10 years as the Portugal's best and most solid bank in the category of medium and small banks by the Exam magazine. Next slide, please. This award refers to the BiG Total Banking that I just presented 2 slides ago, and BiG was distinguished by the Euronext Lisbon Awards 2019 with the Financial Innovation Awards. Next one, please. Also last year, the PPR, introduced in Portuguese, PPR BiG Taxa Plus, which is a retirement savings plan managed by our asset management team, also won the award of best funds in the retirement savings plan. Moving now to the investment solutions and doing a bridge with the previous presentations from Deloitte and CTSU, I will present you how BiG can contribute with investment solutions for both Golden Visa and non-habitual residency. Starting by the Golden Visa, we will focus on the 2 application models that have already been mentioned by Miguel and Jorge, capital investments and investment in funds, since these 2 are the application models that BiG can give a higher contribution and the ones that we see nowadays that are more in vogue. Next slide, please. Starting by capital investment, as Miguel just explained, I will just briefly repeat. Capital investment consists on the investment of the minimum amounts of 1 million. It will change next year, but I will keep with the information that we have this year. The application through capital investment covers a large number of possibilities that can be adjusted to each client's profile. The bank offers various investment options that fits on the capital investment, from a more conservative investment type, like bank deposits, to, for instance, a discretionary management portfolio. The investment possibilities can be grouped in these 3 levels that you can find on this slide. On the first level, the client has a higher decision, deciding by itself and investing in a more, we can say, independent model. Here we offer access to several trading platforms, which will allow the client to manage the portfolio by itself. We offer, for that purpose, trading platforms. We have a trading platform that has been developed by BiG, which is My Bolsa. We also offer 2 other platforms, one from Saxo Bank and Interactive Brokers. On the second level, the client counts with the bank manager advisory, but still controls the methodology used. On the third level, the client delegates the management of the portfolio to the asset management team strategy. However, even delegating the management, we offer a close follow-up with the client, sending regularly reports and discussing the strategy during the process. So on all 3 levels, we can find together with the clients what is the best solution for this application. Moving to investment funds, the application through the investment fund, I will repeat again shortly, consists of the acquisition of units of an investment fund or a venture capital fund in the amount of 350,000 euros until the end of this year. On both options, BiG operates as the custody bank of the fund units. When the investor decides to invest in a venture capital fund, the subscription will be directly with the fund manager, and the bank deposits the fund units into the account. So here, BiG might provide access to several asset managers. You will find some examples here, like ActiveCap, BlueCrow, Indico, and so on. When investing in an investment fund, the subscription of the fund's units is directly with BiG. Moving to the non-habitual residents. So regarding this topic, the bank developed a specific solution for those clients. Bonding with what Aline explained earlier, the non-habitual residence regime provides exemption from tax in Portugal on investment income from foreign countries. So giving a concrete example, if a client invests in securities that pay coupons or dividends, the bank will not execute withholding in those payments. And this setup is at this moment totally automatic. In fact, BiG was the first bank providing this tax exemption in the bank system. Sorry. The client just needs to send us proof of its non-habitual residency. So with that proof, bank will be able to register the tax exemption on the client's account from that moment on. Sorry, I just did not end from the previous slide. Again, just shortly, related to the not related to the non-habitual residency, but also relevant for tax purposes. BiG provides unit-linked solutions with insurance companies in Luxembourg and Ireland. This solution allows to have a segregated account where taxes are only levied when the investor decides to redeem the policy. And this might simplify the annual tax returns a lot. Now you can move on, please. Thank you. So finally, the investment process. And to sum up how this will be working with the bank, BiG did already implement the necessary procedure to meet both Golden Visa and non-habitual residency requirements. For Golden Visa situations, the bank is prepared to provide the client a bank certificate that the client will need further on to present to CEF to apply for the visa during the process. This first certificate will be presented at the beginning of the process on the first year after the investment is completed. And afterwards, in year 2 and 4, BiG will be able to provide the renewal of the certificate so you can complete the residency. For non-habitual residents, the only requirement is the client sending to the bank a copy of the non-habitual residency proof, so that the bank will be able to set up the automatic tax exemption into the client's account. And from that moment on, there won't be Portuguese tax withholding on income from foreign countries. So that is the main information that you need to know about the investment and account opening process. Here we leave you with our contacts. From my side, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thanks to all, and especially our speakers and our guests. Thank you very much for joining us today, and then please stay safe and see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.